Welcome to my owner's review of the Triumph Rocket Free Roadster. So I've had this bike a month now and I'm actually really starting to fall in love with the Rocket Free. I bought it as a bit of a project. I bought it because I thought it was a weird, strange bike that people would like on YouTube. I thought it's far too big and heavy, it's almost comical. And then I've kind of it's just all of a sudden clicked and I kind of now understand what the Rocket Free is about. So if you're considering getting one of these bikes, then I'm going to give you all the facts and figures about why you shouldn't. But then I'm going to finish the video by saying that you should. Why you shouldn't potentially get this bike is obvious. It's 370 kilos, that's the headline figure. Now the weight is down low and you've got, let me just sit on it to show you, you've got bend in the knee. So when you're on the bike at a junction or whatever, that's no problem. Because as long as you've got half decent strength in your quads, like even that angle, I can push the bike back up. It becomes a problem when you're off the bike and you want to move it around. So obviously keep the side stand out at all times and then just manhandle it like that. But you've really got to sort of take the bull by the horns and not let the bike control you. You've got to control where the bike's going. Now 90% of your problems with the Rocket Free's weight will evaporate if you're using the engine. So think of where I parked here. I've actually got a runoff place down here off shot. I can go round behind the camera and then I'll move back up the lane that's just behind you out of shot. And that way I'm using the engine to power the bike. You don't really want to put this thing on an incline or backed into a corner where you've got to manhandle it out, certainly not up a slope, or you will be recruiting passers-by to help you. That said, I feel when you're on the move, the Rocket is such an amazing experience. You're kind of floating and piloting this huge machine through the bends. It just glides through, almost like a big bomber aircraft. Yeah, it's not a Spitfire, it's more like a Lancaster, but you're still, you know, like it's just an amazing experience. Let's move on and we'll talk about the engine. The engine. This is probably the bit that most people buy a Rocket Free for. It is almost like a top trumps engine, isn't it? It's the most powerful engine in a road bike. It is 2.3 litres, but 2.5 in the newer version. It's got 220 Newton meters, almost comical, double the torque of a Yamaha R1. And when I got the bike, I was actually disappointed about how unsophisticated the engine is. It's very kind of clunky, loud, there's clicks, there's whirring noises, it's rumbly. It's not like what you expect a modern Triumph triple, and I think it's because it's got such a big displacement. It's got that kind of parallel twin or V-twin, like super characterful and mechanical. Same with the gearbox. It's almost like a Harley Davidson gearbox, big, solid, clunky gears that feel like that you know when it's gone into gear or not. At the same time, it does feel well engineered, and the torque is pretty outstanding, as you can imagine. It doesn't feel that much quicker than, say, a Bonneville T120 because the torque of the engine is cancelled out by the 370 kilos. So we've got 5 gears, all forward gears, no reverse on this. Changing gear is actually a delight on the Rocket Free. I really enjoy it. And it's so torque rich that you can kind of use any gear for any situation. It's very forgiving in that matter. The clutch is quite heavy. And the other thing to bear in mind is that it has a power band, which not all big displacement engines do. You expect there to be torque from 1500 RPM all the way through. It's not the case on the Rocket Free. From 3,500, it sort of shoots up and whoa, you go into warp speed. I mean, it's quite powerful before that, but that is a noticeable sort of like throw you back into the very comfortable seat. Another thing about the triple, it makes a lot of noise. So you've got 2 big silencers on my bike, they're standard. I wouldn't entertain a aftermarket exhaust system on this bike. There are options, but I just feel it would be obtrusive. It's too loud, it's too unpleasant on the ears. Another thing to consider when you buy one of these is this big old engine gives off a lot of heat. So not only is your right thigh getting toasty, it also actually cracks this cam cover gasket quite frequently. So you can see mine's actually got a little misting of oil at the back there. Now some people say it doesn't matter, you don't even need to worry about it. The amount of oil coming off is so little that it barely needs changing. However, to be proper and have a properly running bike, I would probably change that gasket whenever it does deteriorate due to the heat of the engine. Right, let me just squeeze into this frame now to talk about the brakes and suspension. So you've got twin discs up front. I think they're lifted from a Sprint ST 1050 or one of the Daytona sports bikes. They are very chunky, powerful brakes, and you do need them, but the front brake on this bike is potent enough to bring all 370 kilos to a stop in good order. I've got no issue with the brake at all. Same as the front suspension, does a good job, and it also looks quite cool as well. This upside down fork with the kind of anodized black, it just looks the part. It looks muscular, it looks powerful. Right, one of the major costs on a Rocket 3 are going to be the tyres. You're looking at about £220 for the rear tyre. On the earlier bikes, they actually run a 260 rear, whereas this is a 250. So, sorry, it was a 250 on the early bikes, this is a 240. So you've actually got a few more options. If you want to, you can run a car tyre, obviously at the cost of handling, but it will save you some money. These Avon Cobra Chromes are quite a stylish tyre, and Metzler also do a Rocket 3 tyre, and probably one or two other companies. It's not a cheap tyre. You're looking at about 200 quid plus to have a tyre, and that's without the fitting. I also love the riding position of the Rocket. So particularly the Roadster, where you've got the mid pegs orientation and you've got a 90-degree bend in the knee. Kind of all day comfortable on the legs, very comfy sculpted seat. And then you find that the handlebars aren't too far away. So on some bikes, if the bars are too far away, you're rounding your back and it becomes painful over a longer journey time. Whereas with the Rocket, you're sort of in a kind of a neutral position, legs at 90 degree, and off you go. And the wind blast is actually reduced quite a lot because you're quite far back. The tank comes out here and you've got this little Roadster fly screen to sort of protect you. I'm not going to say there's no buffeting in the helmet, but there's no wind blast into the body, and the buffeting in the helmet isn't awful. Certainly with regular earplugs, you're fine, and that would basically get you through it. If you are going to go touring, then you need to consider the fuel tank range. I have recorded a couple of tanks now to see what MPG I'm getting from the Rocket. It is a 6-gallon tank, so you do have an indicated range of 190 miles, but the actual MPG won't be brilliant, obviously, because you've got a 2.3 litre engine. Another great thing about the Rocket though, you could have a pillion, you could have luggage, and you wouldn't even notice it's on the back. It won't add up to extra weight or reduce the performance of the bike, because this thing already weighs a ton anyway, so having your girlfriend on the back isn't going to make much difference. The main thing about the Rocket 3, and I guess Triumph in general, is they have an air of quality about them. Everything is made from big chunky billet aluminium. There's a whole load of chrome over everything. It's got metal everywhere, no plastic. All the mudguards are made of metal. Obviously the tank's metal. These side panels are metal. When you're coming from Royal Enfield or BSA, as I am, those bikes are built to a cost, and they're brilliant bikes, but there are cheaper feeling pieces on them. Whereas on the Rocket 3, you couldn't really say any of this is cheap feeling. Very, very oozing in quality. So I do like that about the Rocket. So I guess if you're thinking about buying a Rocket, just go ahead and get the nicest bike you can afford. I would go for low mileage over everything else, because obviously at higher mileage, you've got the worries about gearbox issues and that kind of thing. Go for a low mileage bike, and you're getting a bargain, because obviously depreciation has put these bikes now in almost banger territory. You get a hell of a lot of bike for the money. And make sure you're okay with the weights, but really don't be afraid of it. I think it's a bike that, as long as you're confident enough, you can manhandle it around, and just be thoughtful where you stop and where you park and where you store the bike, and you'll be okay. As for insurance, I was quoted I think 280 for this. And I'm quite a young rider. I don't have that many no claims. I think I've got 3 or 4 years no claims. So it's not an awful bike to own and insure. Pick them up quite cheaply, relatively. What's not to like? So let me know what you think about this bike in the comments. I may or may not sell my bike. I am tempted, very, very tempted, to actually keep this Triumph Rocket 3. So let's see what happens.